Hi, everybody. I am in New York City. Frank is in LA. And right now, LA is probably the more pleasant place to be. But anyway, we're so excited that you're here. I'm Marina. And as I said, this is Frank Garcia-Hejl, who's going to be our guest today. My co host, Madalyn, can't join us today, but we're in great hands with Frank. Frank Garcia-Hejl, he is a performer and a teacher at the UCB in LA. You've also seen him in on Dropout, Just for Laughs, just Comedy Central, Broadway Video, all over the place. Frank was also one of my first directors when I started doing mod at the UCB. So anyway, I really am so excited to have you here to chat about all things this particular episode, Frank. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm a big old sketch nerd. So I'm excited to talk about this.
Being a big old sketch nerd is like exactly the requirement for being a guest on the show. So you did it. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm extra excited to have you on the show for a few reasons.
Mhm.
First, because you are just one of the most amazing like character performers that I know.
Well,
And
thank you.
there were just so many things about this episode that felt like the things that went funky, I thought went funky in kind of character specific ways, and in ways
Yeah.
that I think you have spent so much time thinking about. And anyway, so I'm very excited to kind of hear your thoughts on this each sketch as we go along. And the other thing is that you actually many years ago you screen tested for SNL as well.
Good.
So
Yeah.
you have some insight into that part of the process. So that will probably come up as we go along. And as always, we have a chat open. So if people have questions for Frank as we go about characters, about screen testing for SNL, about just writing and sketch in general, I think one of the things that has been so much fun as I've been working on the sketchbook is just sketch comedy it's so craft forward and it bleeds into any other sort of creative endeavor you might do. So any
Absolutely.
writing questions that come up are always welcome here too. Awesome. So Frank, first, before we jump into specific sketches, I'd love to just get like a temperature check on this episode. Like,
Yeah.
what were your, we talk about each episode in the spirit of how we would talk about our calling shows at the UCB, basically, because the goal is to have a common reference so that people can talk about what works, what doesn't work, all that stuff. And
Yeah.
so anyway, so we can definitely get into, we can definitely be critical. The goal is always critical, but respectful. So they were our fellow teachers, basically. So yeah, what's your
Yeah.
temperature check on this?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard for me because I do have friends on the show currently.
Right.
So it's
Hmm.
one of those things where I'm gonna be critical, but it's not anywhere from like because that show is absolutely impossible. It's a miracle it even happens.
Yes.
And something I explain to my students too of being like, if there are at least 3 to 4 good sketches, that's an excellent show.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the history of SNL, it's mostly, misses or just things that didn't work for whatever reason, and that, the batting average, that's why people think of like, "Oh, there was a golden age." It's like, well, you're thinking of the compilations and stuff, and you're remembering the good sketches and your favorite cast and whatnot. I do agree that there are some seasons that are stronger than others. And this episode, coming off of Melissa McCarthy too, which I thought was a pretty strong episode, um, it didn't. There were a couple of sketches that I really liked in concept, but they just didn't. They didn't execute, or the audience just didn't really latch on to it. Like some of
Yeah.
it was more my sense of humor, and I could tell the audience was just like, "No."
Yeah.
It's just like, "All right, cool."
Yeah.
But that's kind of like, those, what is it? The 10 to 1 sketches are
Yeah.
always like where I loved, growing up of being like where the strange ones were, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the term for in case anybody is hearing that for the first time, the 10 to 1 sketches are like literally they're like the sketches that are like 10 to 1 in the morning that are like
Yeah.
the kind of funkier, weirder ones that were maybe on the chopping block too. Yeah, I think that all of that checks out. I think that what's been really interesting this season is just as New York is a character in Sex and the City, so too does the audience seem like a character in this season of SNL. It's been really
Right.
interesting to see. I'm not sure why that is that it I feel the audience is so present in this
Yeah.
season.
I have a feeling I have a theory to that.
Yeah, please.
I have a theory that the reason why it's like that is, and this isn't me like throwing a generation under the bus, but it's something I've noticed online, like especially with threads where you'll like post something that's like an obvious joke, Like, oh, I can't believe I farted out a unicorn today. And just like, it's very obvious it's a joke. And then
Not
you'll
for
have
some
people,
people, Frank. Some
right,
people have that.
exactly. It's a real affliction for some people. And I don't mean to make light of it, but I will. Um, the, where there'll be comments under it being like, well, that's not possible. Or they'll just be
Mhm.
like, I don't understand. Or they just will like be too literal about it.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it has to do with like, the people are so afraid to be the one to laugh first. We know
Yeah.
this at any show.
Yeah.
There's always that like, when the show first starts where people are like, is it okay to laugh? Am I laughing too loud? And they're very self-conscious about their reaction rather than just watching the show. And I feel like people are more self-conscious about how they look to other people these days than before, where they can't
Yeah.
just enjoy something, that there has to be some kind of, maybe I'm pontificating on something that doesn't exist, but it's just something I've noticed where people are kind of almost too aware of what they're doing instead of just enjoying the thing
That's
that they're
I think
watching.
that's really interesting. I think that I think one thing I'll say as well is that I think people are more used to laughing on their own right now, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah, because
you're taking it for
isolation, yeah.
content on your own. So it kind of makes sense that there's maybe a little bit of I would believe that there's a little more, like, wariness, slowness to, like, laugh out to laugh out loud, in a group.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's really interesting. Well, I
Well, especially since most comedy is on, like, TikTok and stuff.
yeah.
Very rare that people are going to see live comedy.
Yeah, no, totally, and I think that it's interesting, I think that there's a lot of I think that this season of SNL is experiencing a little bit of the tension of that,
Yeah,
in
I
a
think
really
so.
fascinating way.
I've
Um,
noticed the audience way too much this season.
it's so fascinating. I'm
Yeah.
excited for, like, somebody to write a dissertation on it,
Yeah,
but, maybe it'll be us. But awesome. Let's jump into talking about the show then.
yeah.
We'll start with the cold open.
Mhm.
So Trump giving a press conference on Air Force One. So this is Madeline and I have been having sort of, have sort of struggled with the cold opens just because they sort of is this broad character of Trump that they do. And we've also talked about how the cold opens tend to be sort of the least sketchy of the sketches in general.
Yeah.
I think of them as sort of a reference grab bag. But yeah, go ahead and share what jumped out to you about this, especially in the context of, the Trump character, I guess.
Yeah, the cold opens are always well, first of all, I don't love that they're using AI for the graphics now. Anybody who's heard me say anything knows how staunchly anti-AI I am.
Yeah.
But, as far as the sketch itself, the cold opens are usually just a place for references for what happened in the week. So, like, oh, Trump said this thing and this thing and this thing, and then they give it a premise so that way they can kind of just throw those things in there and do jokes. But James Austin Johnson um is such an incredible impressionist and so specific, and he has this thing with Trump where he's got the ramble that
Yeah.
I always love, because
Yeah.
I love like little deviations of like the Atlantis thing and mentioning dogma, and it's
Yeah.
very much of James's sense of humor, which
Hmm.
I like about it. But it is one of those things as a sketch writer and performer where it's like not your favorite part of the show.
Yeah.
The cold open, when we teach topical sketches, people are always like, "Oh, I don't think I can write that," or "I don't know." It's like they only think of SNL cold opens because it's like the most available example of 50 years of like a political sketch, being
Yeah.
like, "Oh yeah, the cold open. It's always the president, or always has to do something with whatever happened politically that week." And I don't love it, but occasionally there'll be a joke or two that I appreciate, and, like, James getting to play in that is always fun for me to watch,
Hmm.
especially when he's doing, like, little things with the curtain.
Yeah.
At one point, he does the Batman animated series pose with the curtain.
Oh,
Like, it's just, like, little things like that that I kind of like. But other than that, like, it's just not my favorite because it is a lot of, like, grab bag of, like,
yeah.
here are references of things that happened during the week.
Totally. I think you're and I really that's such an interesting thing you mentioned about, like, the ramble being like, the way he kind of rambles in the Trump way is, like, that is I think I agree that that's, like, one of the most impressive things about that impression that he's capturing.
Yeah.
I think there's something interesting there in terms of how like, imagining that we're plucking it out of a cold open and somebody's determined, like, I don't find Trump sketches to be, like, in general, the most enjoyable, but, like,
Yeah,
if
I mean, for me
let's
t yeah,
imagine that you are taking, like, somebody a character who like the person who rambles in a specific way. It's so interesting thinking about how would you set up the sketch to let the ramble be the fun part that you return to, because I think that that's one of those interesting characteristics that sort of can be a little hard to plug into a game.
Yeah. And you've seen them like, I mean, when he started doing the Trump impression on the show, you could see them trying to fit in that device because that was specifically James's take on it, which I really
Yeah,
loved about the impression was just being like, he tapped into that part of Trump that a lot of people who did Trump impressions didn't do.
totally.
And he just found that like there's always an impressionist on the show or outside of the show that just finds that one little element that you're like, oh, right, it's right in front of us.
Yeah.
But they're able to just like put a spotlight on it. I think Dana Carvey's really good at that too, of just being
Yeah.
like, he doesn't even have to be perfect with the impression, but he's really good at finding like the essence and like the targets that people are like, yeah, that, you know?
That's a really great point. Yeah, that's a really great
Yeah.
point, and that helps also, me appreciate it more because I think that there are times where just the generally seeing a Trump character impersonation, I sort of, like, roll my eyes, but you're right that there is a very this is a very specific flavor. I think his voice is like, Trump's voice is so particular that everyone can kind of do a Trump, but you're right that there's something, like, very specific about his Trump that is
He
more
was
interesting.
he was the one too that James was the one that, like, brought in, that kinda, like, gravel to it, like, in the
Mhm.
cadence of, like, it'll be gravelly and then it kinda goes soft,
Yeah.
and where most people were doing more of the, like, the,
Yeah.
Fifi, whatever, and that's fine. I mean, like, Taminick, of course, did an amazing job with the Trump impression and stuff, but, yeah, when you live in today's world, you get kind of overwhelmed with the truth of the insanity of, what our reality is in America right now, and
Yeah.
it can be exhausting where you're like, "I have to see enough of this during the week that's already insane."
Yeah.
It's very hard to build off of insane. It's hard to parody insane when, uh, it already is wild, like, no matter what you come up with, there's gonna be something weirder or wilder that is
Totally.
done that you're like, okay, so the
Yeah.
jokes have to be good or they have to be, like, hyper specific like the Alanis thing,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just a place to just dump a bunch of Trump stuff in the week,
Yeah.
and I don't love it, but, I like, that Ashley is playing, Caroline Leavitt,
Yeah.
now, I really like Ashley a lot, and, I like even jokes like, "I prefer all the crunch berries," when he's going on his rant, like, I think that didn't get the laugh it deserved personally, but, and also, this is a hyper specific LA thing, but when he mentions Warner Brothers, the
Oh,
buying the
yeah.
Warner Brothers, and he talks about the Warner Brothers tour because it is, like, notoriously, like, okay, it's
That's
fine. It's
really
really cool to be on the lot, but it really is, like, it's better to be on the lot, I think, without the tour because
yeah.
you can kind of, like, explore and find these places and stuff, but, the tour itself is kinda like compared to, like, something like Universal, which is, like, a whole ass ride. It's an hour long, and they, take you to all these things and sets, and it's really cool, and then at Warner Brothers, it really is kinda like, there's that tree,
That's
So,
fantastic. There's something to
yeah.
be said for, like, just something that's really specific that not everyone will hang on to, but,
Yeah.
but yeah, did the cold open so, yeah, I think, a really impressive impression. Yeah, I think that just it's meant to be a bit of a grab bag, and I think this one really
Yeah.
wound up kind of
I didn't even
being
see the chat over here. Hi, Deanna.
Hi, Deanna. Awesome. Should we move on to so the monologue didn't there's sort of like a we're gonna just briefly chat on it. I thought it was very charming. There was sort of like a whisper of a sketch structure in a way of like
Yeah.
guy who is determined to seem like he doesn't actually want to be cast in Ratatouille, but like really wants live action Ratatouille to be a thing. I liked that there was like a hint of a sketch to this. A
Yeah.
whisper of a sketch.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's charming. He's a very charming actor, he's attractive. I loved him in Challengers. I haven't seen, the new Knives Out yet. I'm, trying to do that as soon as as a parent, it's very hard to
Yes.
sometimes find that time to watch a full
We
thing,
went
even
to
watching this.
we went to a baby-friendly screening at the Alamo, and that was the perfect setting for it.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is awesome.
it was
Yeah, I love
awesome.
that they do that. They do that here in LA too. When my daughter was younger, we would go to like screenings like that where they're like, "Hey, everybody knows this is gonna be loud and a shit
Yeah,
show, and there's gonna be kids like running around and crying, but at least you're not bothering other people
yeah,
while trying to do this." So I
totally.
love
Yeah,
that they do that. Yeah.
it was great.
Um, I do think that what's funny about that monologue though is that I feel like we're in the era now of meme-based monologues.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, where, like, the
Yes.
topic or the execution is all based throughout, like, meme culture.
Yeah.
Because that's kinda
Yes.
where, like, they were, like, fan casting and there were, like, memes and stuff, and I think that's, like it's funny that that was, like, the premise or the subject that was used as a kicking off point to do the sketch kinda element of back and forth, you know?
Yes, that's a great point, and that's something that has come up in past episodes too, where I keep on being surprised after the fact with like, "Oh, wait, this was all a reference to this blah, blah, blah thing on the internet," or whatever, so, anyway, I
Yeah,
think that might come up a couple of times today as well as we're chatting
absolutely.
through, probably with references that I missed too. Awesome. Should we just jump into the first, sketch of the night?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. Okay, so this first one is Let's Find Love. This is the dating game with the feisty elderly lady, who is on the show basically as a contestant. So
Mhm.
this is kind of this as soon as I saw this one, I was like, I'm so glad that Frank is our guest. This is going to be a really character-y heavy show tonight, I bet. And this one I thought was really is gonna there are sketches where I don't love the sketch, but they're so teachable that I'm grateful to the sketch. So this was
Oh,
one of
yeah.
those where I was very grateful to the sketch. So I'd love to hear, like, yeah, just jump on in. Like, what were the things that stood out to you about this one? If you were seeing this in like a 301 class, like what would have jumped out to you to note?
Yeah, I mean, the structure is there. There's, like, really
Yeah.
great get structure where you have introduction, we're always gonna give Keenan a funny name. I don't think the joke worked in this instance, but, as much as the other names that they always give Keenan. But what I appreciated about this, and I just taught a workshop on Saturday, that was about getting to the game within the first page and a
Mhm.
half. And that's exactly what they did. Like, I've been so big on teaching my students improv and sketch about
Mhm.
context is everything, and that, like, there is no subtext, only text,
Yeah.
in these situations, and you have to make as soon as the lights come up, an audience is gonna start scanning and being like, "Where's the joke? Where's the joke?" And
Mm,
unless you tell them, like, what they're in for, or at least setting them up to be like, "Here's gonna be the sketch."
mm,
Sorry. Here's gonna be the sketch. They're gonna start making assumptions, and then if that assumption isn't satisfied, they're gonna zone out
mhm.
of the sketch, but immediately within that first minute, we're getting Keenan saying, "Okay, so to be inclusive, more inclusive, we've, made the age ranges a little bit wider." So, of course, we're like, "Okay," now in our mind, we're like, "We're definitely gonna see somebody older in this situation," and we have game show the reason why SNL uses so many game show sketches or talk show sketches is because it's the perfect premise in order to move your game forward because we know the beats that have to happen
Yeah.
in a game show. We know the beats that have to happen in a talk show. It's so widely known. We have a warm up in improv called the theme of my wedding,
Mm,
which works with game because it's saying like the theme of my wedding is video games, and then you would say what would be true about the wedding,
mm.
being like, is officiated by Mario. When they drive off, they drive off in Mario Karts and they say, "Let's go."
Yeah.
It's because everybody knows the details of a wedding and what is true about a wedding, so that when you put that theme, aka the game on it, then you're able to play game with each student labeling, here's what would be true about it, right?
Mhm.
So immediately you have on here, Keenan setting this up. So then, of course, we go down the line. The only miss, I think, with going down the line, introducing these people, I thought that the women had good jokes, but they would cut back to Josh, right? That's his name? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Character who would just kind of like do a cute like reaction and not a response.
Yeah.
And to me, that uh that didn't help with the pace of the sketch. That's where it started to kind of like hiccup a little bit.
Yeah. Mhm.
But
I
again, yeah.
My thought it's so interesting. I thought that there was something they kind of stepped on their own reveal a little bit, but when they said, like, the age of the show is blah, 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 I would've my impulse would have been reveal the character and then have him kind of like frame the game with like, wait, sorry, she sounded a little different from the other contestants. Well, yeah, justification. The age of the show
Yeah,
is whatever lifted. I do think that the tricky thing they would have run into in that case is, and this is my note for probably the first beat of the sketch, was a lot of that first bit felt like it was more about her wheelchair than about her as a character. And even if it
yeah,
had been focused on her age, then like that's also like a little, I don't know. I feel like there was something like a little, it was borderline on like the wheelchair jokes are, I think, a little funky. And then like the age jokes maybe were a little unspecific in some ways until the lines were like, why should I go? Like I think that the why should I go stuff was actually a lot more fun to me, and I almost wondered, like, is
yeah.
there a version of the sketch where it's really not about age and it's just this really particular character instead?
Yeah, because you have a few of like, yeah, the "Why should I go?" comes up twice, and
Mhm,
then also, "Get it right" comes up twice.
mhm.
So it's a little unbalanced with as far as, like, the point of view or, like, what's the catchphrase? I hate
Mhm.
saying that, like,
No, 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 but I
catchphrase
think
'cause it's
that's
not
right.
really
Mhm,
but, like, I mean, look, Ashley is an incredible performer. I knew her from here in LA. She was at UCB for a very short while and is just like, yeah, Groundlings is more your style and speed, and she, like,
mhm.
crushed it there. And, I love watching the characters that she does on the show and that she's allowed to do on the show, which
Yeah,
is even better.
totally.
And for this, I think it's like it's no fault of hers
No.
at all that the pace with SNL, it's so tricky because of cameras and execution in front of a live audience, and when the motorized cart is like I wouldn't say it's a wheelchair, it felt more like a rascal
Oh,
or s
yeah,
like that
right,
kind of thing.
right.
It felt like, it wanted a bigger impact, but it didn't have that.
Yes, mhm.
So then because of that, it kind of, like, started the sketch off in a weird dampness, but then once she started going on of, like, I want my pills right, I want my salmon right, all that,
Yes.
you're like, "Okay, here's the character, this is fun." And then, we go back to just, like, straight, sketch format of being like, "Here's the questions." We go down the line, and then we hear the character's reaction to it, but it does feel like I wanted a little bit more consistency from it
Yeah.
as far as, like, because especially maybe it's just me being a little too old school about being like, the rule of threes or whatever, but introducing the 2 very strong point of view elements within that same sketch and then not satisfying a 3rd felt, interesting to me.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that in a way, that note actually to me does not feel grumpy and old school. It feels to me like actually it's kind of celebrating the fun part of the of the character. It's
Yeah,
like we just wanted to see more of that because it was there were things about that character were really interesting, and I think when teachers urge students to get more specific in their games, what they're often or to hone in a little bit more, what they often are saying is like, you have something interesting, like don't drop it and run off to the next shiny thing in this character. And I agree. I
yeah.
think that there was something really fun that was going on in the way this character was speaking that just felt like a little. I feel like I would love to see one more draft of this one. Basically, was sort of
Oh,
my
yeah,
note.
and I think yeah, and, of course, the nature of the show, they're doing it within a couple of days,
Yeah.
once it's, like, from page to stage, and, something I tell my students is, like, it's one thing to have behavior, but that point of view is also important or
Hmm.
justification for that behavior
Yeah.
because both have to exist.
Yeah.
We teach that about the Venn diagram of, like, it has to be, with character and point of view, it has to be behavior and point of view. And one can be stronger than the other, where, like, some are implied through the action, like Unfrozen Caveman Lawyer,
Hmm.
while others need it a little bit more specific to be like, what's their point of view about the world or the situation that's happening in order
Yes.
to say, "If this, then what?"
Frank, I'm just having this memory right now of when I first started teaching sketch, and I think it was my first day of teaching character. And during the break, I just had this memory of going to the teacher's lounge and being like, "How do you describe character
Oh,
games?"
yeah.
And I remember you pulled out a piece of paper and you, like, drew me a little diagram. You were like, "The character is wearing glasses. The glasses are how they see the world. That is their point of view."
Mm.
And I remember that being, like, very, very helpful, like, thinking about them as having, like, glasses that were tinted with their specific way of looking at the world. So,
That's what you're doing, you're showing an
yeah.
audience the truth about being like, "We know what it's like to go through these everyday mundane things, whether it be at a coffee shop, an office, or any of these, like, usual sketch premises or locations." but how does this character live in our world?
Yes.
They're always like the weird one, and we're exposing and feeding into that behavior. At no point, even if we're saying like, "Hey, what you're doing is crazy," through our actions and through the premise, we're still feeding into that character to just play.
Right, and I think that the specifics that were so much fun, like, you wanna get my pills right, the salmon right, all that stuff, like, that is a type of lens that this character is
Yeah,
seeing the world through, and that's why we want to see, like, okay, if this is what she sees, then what does she see over here? What does she see about the question of, like, what a date should be or all that stuff, so, yeah, I think that's a
yeah.
there's it I think it was I think the oh, sorry, actually, on a totally different note, but relating to the sketch too, in terms of point of view, I thought it was really interesting and maybe not my favorite choice that they had him as a contestant coming down so hard on her too, that he was like, "I'm not interested. I don't wanna hear more." I feel like there is something in that that maybe added a little bit more of the stiltedness in a way that you were describing in the
Mhm.
camera troubles as well.
Yeah, I it's so hard to tell because, like, you wanna be able to have it's tough with SNL because they do toy with sketch structure because they want to have jokes with the other characters who are voices of reason,
Yeah.
and sometimes I think it's to the detriment of the sketch where it's like, "Oh, that joke kind of then broke the strength of the unusual character in the sketch because now this person's unusual too.
Yeah.
This
Mhm.
person has introduced this unusual game," and that's not to say that sub games can't happen and that can't be a case, but if you want ultimate impact for your character, it's all gonna be focused on the character.
Yeah.
And I think, like, if you go too far in the other direction of, like, "I hate this," or, "Stop doing this," sometimes it can be too much of a roadblock as
Yeah.
opposed to a way to serve the comedy of the scene.
Yeah, totally. I think that makes a lot yeah, I think that all makes a lot of sense. I will say one more thing on this sketch before we move on to the next one.
Yeah.
I thought that they'd had a really good ending for this sketch, and I think that that's
I thought it was
unusual.
funny.
I thought it was, like,
Yeah.
a funny ending, and I was a little surprised because I thought the sketch was, like, a little alright, like, a little, but the ending I thought was pretty fun, and I think that it's unusual to have a sketch that's so-so with a solid ending, so I was like,
Yeah, I mean, with
"Cool."
all my criticisms, I really do like I said, I love Ashley as a
Yeah,
performer, and I
he's an
think
incredible
this character itself is funny. I
Yeah,
did laugh,
yeah,
but if we're going we're 2 UCB teachers talking about sketch theory, and of course, that's gonna it's we're gonna be picky about that kinda stuff, but, the ending, I always love for me, my taste, I always love characters who are in the wrong, somehow proven right or winning in the end.
yeah, yeah.
And I that's why I like that ending where it was like, "No, not you," and the host and that Keenan was into it.
Yeah, I've never picked.
It just kind of like I don't know, I just like endings like that. I always like success and failure, you know?
Yeah, that's a great I love that way of thinking about it, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome, should we move on to the next sketch?
Yes,
The
let's
next
do it.
one is, Spotify Wrapped, but for Uber Eats.
Yes. I personally really like this sketch. I think it's a great commercial parody sketch, especially with dealing with, something that's in the zeitgeist, especially right now, which is uniquely special to SNL that they can do things like this, where it's Spotify Wrapped. But being like, "What if Uber Eats did it?" And you're like, "Oh, no." Like, immediately, we're like, "Oh
Mhm.
god," because what does it reveal about us? And they do a good job of using this is, I think, another good example to teach because you're using the elements of what we know about Spotify Wrapped and then saying, "But what would it look like if it were Uber Eats?
Right,
And how do we amp up the shame?"
right. Yes.
Right? So it's like, we know that it's a thing that people are worried about sharing about their Uber Eats habits. So for the rest of the sketch, what we're gonna do is just keep turning up the heat by using the foundations of mapping to the Spotify Wrapped.
Yes, I think that this is a great example of mapping. I think that's a
Yeah,
great thing to circle here because mapping is something that, is a really I think that what's fun about, this as a mapping game is that when you're playing with a mapping game, you really wanna think about, like, what is the sort of, like, emotional kernel to it, right? Like,
yeah,
what do you get? What's the meat that comes out of making this sort of analogy? And I think that you're right that the shame is the fun part here, right? That we're playing with. It's
yeah.
like, "Oh, this is fun. This is oh, no, this is embarrassing." I will say my note with this one was just that I wish like, I loved the specific of you're in the 1% of people who are eating chicken nuggets. Like that, I love that specific.
Yeah.
I felt like the specifics weren't as strong in this one.
Uh-huh.
I thought it was like the premise was nice and clean. I like the 1%, the chicken nuggets. And then I just wish that some of the specifics had maybe been a little bit stronger in this. Cause like I laughed at the reveal, I laughed at the chicken nuggets, but then like I wasn't laughing at a ton of the jokes throughout it.
Uh-huh.
But that was my experience of it.
I kind of like when they have moments where they break the commercial parody thing because like the way that we teach it is like, it has to live within the logic of the world of a,
Mhm.
real commercial. But like the moment where like James's character Ashley like does the poppin' fresh, the poking of the belly, and she says, oh, what was it? I think I wrote it down.
What woman would ever want that? Or yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, what woman in the world would like what you just did? The phrasing of that is always
Yeah.
like is really funny. Yeah, I don't I like the specifics, but I can see what you mean. It feels a little bit like, well, yeah, this is if they had a few more pitches or drafts, it could, I
Yeah.
didn't love like I did like the beat where Sarah Sherman, like where they're
Yes,
showing like,
with the
her
photos.
getting the food and stuff, but her
Totally.
throwing the phone out the window and then having Mikey say like, "Oh my god, a phone just hit me." Like I get the joke and I think it's funny, but it's like I don't know, it didn't have the impact after that such a great visual, you know?
Yes, totally. I
Yeah.
think that there was just, like, again, like, little teeny I think that the overall structure of it was solid. I just felt like that's when I would have gone into with, like that would have been a great, like, getting more pitches from a table of yeah, in a writer's room sort of vibe. That's the
Yeah.
sort of my note for that one, yeah.
And we know that, like, that Thursday, they're at a table pitching jokes, and they got all these jokes, but, like, again, pressure cooker, and there's only so much time that you can do, and you're working under pressure, so, like, those are the best jokes that they could come up with at that time, so I don't fault them for
Oh,
it.
definitely
It's
not,
just, like,
no.
one of those things, if they were students of ours, we'd be like and we had that, like, extra weeks or whatever for rehearsals
Totally.
and whatnot, we'd be
And
like, "Alright, let's keep trying to beat the jokes." Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's part of what's fun about this to me is that, like, sketch is so much about process that I find that even set SNL, which is, like, the biggest sketch institution there is on TV, that there is room to talk about process in a good faith
Mhm.
way, like, in terms of teachable
Yeah.
moments, so that's part of the fun, I think. Shall we move on to the next one?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, this one I am so excited to talk about. This was the doctor sketch. And the reason I'm
Yeah.
so excited to talk about this is the classic thing that a sketch teacher says to their students is you have to be specific in what you're playing with as the unusual thing. And you don't want to just have a sketch that's weird doctor. And lo and
Uh,
behold, this sketch I think had some really fun performance elements, some really fun specifics. I love the setup of like I am here and my intern is going to be delivering the news, but it was I thought pretty all over the place in a way that
yeah.
I would love to hear you just like explore and talk about. Cause I think this one was another great example of like something kind of charactery that felt a little funky to me.
Yeah, I mean, like, I love Bowen, we
Yeah.
knew him from UCB too, and, I mean, whatever he does, it's just gonna be fun to watch, and this character, I feel like Bowen's really good at, like, vibe-based characters, you know what I mean?
Mm.
Where it's like,
Mhm.
it's an element that we recognize in popular culture or of, like, niche, social media culture. Uh, I mean, if you ever listen to the podcast with Matt Rogers, like, the specifics of that world that he brings into his sketches where it's like, yeah, it's not gonna be a classic character sketch where it's like behavior and point of view, it's more about a character type or a
Yes.
personality type
Mhm.
that is in a situation where you're like, "Oh, what would it look like if this, like, wealthy, fashionista or whatever, is a doctor and lives
Yes.
in this unusual is from this unusual world, but we put them into the mundane, right?
Mhm.
So it's more about the personality and the caricature as opposed to being like the classic character behavior point of view. And based off of that point of view, we're going to know about like, cause like with
Yes.
the Dave Foley doctor monologue from Kids in the Hall that we show, it's like he does start with being like, "I'm a bad doctor," but we find out the specificity of that is that he got by on charm.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
like he got to his position because of how charming he was and that people would help him out and that most of his, work is through referrals.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think sometimes I think it's based on performers, and maybe it's because I'm biased because I do know Bowen and I like Bowen's work. And I think that, like, for me, I see where he's coming from as far as like the vibe or the character type.
Mhm.
And then it's just a format to then insert jokes,
Yeah.
like the deconstruction element of it too, of like the airplane joke of like, I am serious and don't call me Shirley,
Yeah.
which is such a hard joke to deliver and then for the audience to catch up with. Because I believe I wrote it down where like the deconstructed joke is so the original joke is, surely you can't be serious. I am serious. Don't call me Shirley. Right.
Mhm.
But in here we have the assistant say, don't call me, wait, is it, oh, wait, let's see. Yeah. Uh, don't call me Shirley. I am. And don't call me serious. My name is Shirley or something like
Right.
that. I think I wrote it down wrong, but it was like, it was a very weird deconstructed joke that the audience didn't quite grasp.
Right. I think
Do
the
you know what
audience
I
was
mean?
having a hard time following the sketch in general. Like, I think that
Oh,
I think
yeah.
that they were enjoying the Bowen of it. I think that it was I think it was, like, a little and I wonder if part of this was, like, also the dynamic too, is, like, patient, usual pairing. I really liked like, all the things of the nurse coming in and be like, "Don't worry, the patient's dead," like that. All that stuff I thought was kind of a fun sub
Yeah.
game, but I think to me, this one felt just, like, a little bit a little bit stilted. Like, I almost this is almost one
Oh,
where
yeah.
I was like, I could see this working so great and clicking as a character monologue more than being in scene, actually.
Yeah. It's kind of weird how SNL goes through these like pendulum swings of character based sketches that work and then premise based sketches mostly because there was a good while there where you wouldn't really see characters. The only character sketches or characters you would see were on Weekend Update
Mhm.
because they were easiest to put characters there because again,
Right.
character point of view, if you have a clear character point of view or a game and then you're like, please comment on these current events, it's an easy device for characters to react to and to play off of the host too, because it's like, girl you wish you wouldn't have started a conversation with at a party. And it's so wrapped, the game is already in the title of, the character that then everything that is being presented to this character is going to react in this behavior and point of view.
Mhm, mhm.
And when you have like a full sketch, I don't know if it's just taste or what, but it also depends on the cast and what their strengths are because for a while they didn't really have many character performers.
Right.
You think about like the biggest shift that SNL had was in the 95 season going from that Bad Boys of SNL to then hiring a bunch of Groundlings performers who are all character performers.
Right.
So that's why you get a lot of recurring characters in that era is because that's their strength. And now I would say it started kind of when they hired like Chris Redd and Heidi Gardner and,
Mhm.
these sketch performers,
Right.
Ego, where they were like super, super specific with sketch performing and character performing that it started to come back. However, character sketches are so hard to execute because it's all about timing, it's all about pacing.
Right.
And if, say, they make a camera cut that doesn't work or there's a flub because of the cue cards, it really ruins the momentum and it could
Yeah.
die,
And I
you
think that
know?
there's an interesting challenge here too because it's like the character sketch plus the sort of more stand-up expertise that they seem to be I think there's an interesting like, a little bit of an interesting tension at this particular moment in this particular season, but
Yeah.
that I'm really curious to see how it continues to sort of play out. To me, this sketch felt like we were sort of running into, like, a little bit of trouble with kind of, like, really getting it off the ground as much as I love watching, like, Bowen's performance, and again, I love the
Yeah.
setup of it, like, the setup of, like, doctor with intern is, like, a really fun setup.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one I think just felt a little more wobbly to me, than I would have hoped.
Yeah. And also, like, with Andrew being the voice of reason, at one point, he's doing a great job playing the voice of reason, but at one point he's, like, doing the, like, very winky, like, como se dice, like, if I have anything to divulge, and that kind of breaks it a little bit too when you already have an unusual character.
Yeah.
Uh, but that being said, I mean, like, it did feel like, again, vibes, caricature, and then you just insert jokes. It's
Yeah.
just all inserting jokes that are funny
Yeah.
for this weird character. So you have, like, lollipops, and you have,
Yeah, the lollipops really made me laugh. I really like
it
that
made me
joke.
laugh too, yeah.
I really love that. I think that maybe the more I'm thinking about it, it was sort of just, like, maybe just the wrong backdrop for that character to play out in a funny way. Like, really, maybe it's like a point of view question or something. Because I think that what's interesting, what you were saying about Bowen doing sort of like a more kind of like vibes-based character, in a way, I think there's something a little bit adjacent that happens with Tim Robinson. They play
Mhm.
out totally differently, right? They like totally different energies, totally different characters, totally different ways that the sketches go. But
Yeah.
I think that there's something really interesting about a sketch that's like this kind of person who dot 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 in this experience, right? Where like just watch you just want to watch them sort of like uh I don't know, like a pinball around their
Mhm.
their container. And I
Yeah.
think that I do wonder if maybe the voice of reason set up for this just like wasn't contained enough to maybe hold all the strangeness of this character. Maybe this was a little bit too murky of a character for them to go off of.
I think, yeah, the voice of reason has to be a strong path forward in your sketch. It has to be a way for the unusual character to bounce off of, and if your voice of reason is almost too soft or too agreeable, it's harder to, like, show that, that effect of, like, how
Yeah.
weird the other character is, and then how they react, and it's just tough because, like, I mean, it's hard to write voice of reason in some sketches because then you're like, "Oh, I want this to be fun for the actor, but also, like, I don't want it just to be nag the whole time," right? You have to
Yeah.
find ways to still move the premise forward and serve up your character to play their game,
Yeah.
that's the whole purpose of having that voice of reason, and, it ends with, like, of course, an audience is gonna go crazy with a kiss, especially if it's 2 dudes, like, for a while, we were at UCB being like, "Can we put a," like, it's not you can't just depend on that joke, and
Yeah.
it's not really a joke too, it's just kind of like it's a little bit of a cheap device,
Yeah.
and especially not to move ahead, but, like, especially when there's, like they do it again in the next
Let's
sketch, so
actually just jump ahead to the next
yeah.
sketch too, because I think that's a really interesting, segue. They were 2 back-to-back, kissing sketches.
Mhm.
So, yeah, let's talk about this bachelorette. I think that well, first thing I will say about this one structurally that I think is kind of is nice and teachable is in terms of clean setup. Like,
Oh, yeah.
we hired a stripper. "Oh, I don't want a stripper." No, this is a different kind of stripper, right? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't get, like, cleaner than that. You've set yourself
Yep.
up for doing whatever you want. Okay, so then this one I had sort of, like I thought it was, like, structurally clean. I was kind of, like I was a little bothered by it, just, like, it sort of felt like it was just saying, like, the opposite of the man is these, like, soft, progressive men
Right,
in a
yeah.
in a way that I found, like, a little problematic, like,
Okay.
like, I was just, like, a little annoyed, like, "Do we have consent to enter your home?" And then,
Right.
kind of this I think the vibe of this one to me felt like it was saying, like, woke men aren't real men or something like that, which
Oh,
is, like
yeah. I didn't see it like that, but
I
I get
don't
where
think
you're
that was
coming
the
from.
intention. I don't think that's the
Yeah.
intention at all, but I was sort of, like, crossing my arms at this one a little bit.
I mean,
But
you
yeah,
see it how you see it,
yeah,
that's the way you interpret it is how you interpret it. For me,
yeah,
it was just felt like because for me, I think with the Jane character, I feel like they put that voice in there to kind of give it that context of being like, right, when you have a bachelorette party or bachelor party and you have a stripper, it's so, like, pure, testosterone or, estrogen or, like, it's just very much a, like, very aggressive, sweaty, there's, like, just certain, like, elements that are very aggressive about the act of hiring a stripper for this
yeah,
and very in your face. So then to take that type of, like, woke soy boy, trope and then to me, it felt like, oh, I could see the like the difference here, but you know, you do get jokes sometimes about like, do I have consent? And that's where it gets kind of like a little dicey, where you're like,
Yeah.
oh, are you making fun of that about consent, or are you truly using it in order to play the game of the, you know, it rides that line a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but for me, it was like I didn't even hear. Speaking of having kids, you know, I have to watch it with, you know, with volume a little bit down and not with the. And when you're watching a live show with uh closed captioning, it's not always accurate.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
That I've been
yeah,
running into that trouble a lot. Yeah.
yeah. But I wasn't sure. Do you know what song they were playing on the boombox? Because that was one that I was like, oh, that's a detail I wanted to know.
I can't
If
remember.
you know in the comments, please say so. But yeah, I just it wasn't my the format's clean, the sketch, you know, the beats are clean. But as far as like the topic goes, not really my taste or
Yeah.
style, you know, and it's like I get the jokes. That's the thing too. Maybe it's just because we are sketch teachers and we've been doing sketch for like for me, it's been like almost 25 years of doing,
Mhm.
you know, learning and doing sketch comedy. Wait, what Morgan is saying it was genuine.
Genuine
Was it
rhyme.
really? I would see see, if I were in the writer's room, I'd be like, no, it has to be Iron and Wine or something that's like even like later when Mikey says like, come on, Fleet Foxes, you know, calls them Fleet Foxes, which is a band that's like a very softy, you know, indie band. I would imagine like that would be if they are like these kind of woke little, you know, sensitive boys, what would be the song on the
Right.
yeah.
I think that the one thing that I think has been helpful for me to think about with sketches when I've been noting them is thinking about, like, what is the part of it that feels the most fun and, like, and, like, what about that was fun and what about that points to a direction that would've like, I would've liked more. I think that to me, the thing that I liked the most in it was like, the weird, like, cardigan striptease
Did I
thing.
freeze or did
Oh, that might be me if Rose. Hang on, let's see. I think we'll come back because I can hear you.
okay,
Oh.
great, good.
Oh, yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, there we go, you're back. Yeah, like, I think that the cardigan striptease thing was really fun. I just would've loved to, like it felt like they were, like, almost related behaviors, but not totally packaged together, and I
Mhm.
kind of wish that, like, there had been just, like, a little bit more packaging of the specificity. Like, it felt like
Yeah,
between, like, the consent, the Zoran, the cardigan, it felt like something was, like, almost but not quite the right specifics,
right.
um, that felt, like, a little off to me. So and I think because the first joke was about consent, I was sort of like, I don't really love where this
It
is
got
heading."
also, it's like, I think I'm definitely watching the show now being like, "Oh, right, I'm at the age now where I maybe don't understand certain references
Mhm.
or, you know, nods." Because she said also Sally Rooney message board, and I didn't know that reference. That's
I
probably on me.
I mean, I know because there's the novelist Sally Rooney, so I know Sally Rooney, and I thought that was a good I actually thought that was a good specific I did like that
No, I
justification.
but
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I'm like, "Oh, I don't understand, you know,
Right.
the joke,
No,
but
totally.
I can follow the even though I don't know the specific." It's like when I was a kid watching Mystery Science Theater 3000 where it's like, I don't know who, you know, this person is that they're referencing, but the way they said it was pretty funny,
Yes, totally. Yeah,
you know?
exactly. I think that's totally
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
And that's what kind of like what I didn't quite get that, but I understood the context of it.
Yeah.
And I think there's some good jokes in here. There's, like, some good moments. I actually did like the Zoran, like, you
Yeah.
know,
Mhm.
tattoo where it would be,
Yes.
like, Thug Life or whatever, and then even just being like, you know, when they're doing the lap dance where he's crying about the Supreme Court,
Yeah.
um, like, that's the kinda thing that makes me laugh in the room where I'm like, "Yeah," and then when you put it on stage, you're like, "Oh, it didn't quite have the impact I wanted."
I think that's right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where, like, there really is something that happens from page to stage, and especially with, like, SNL, they do the sketches, they do a, test run, you know, like, they do, the pre-show run where they get to see how things are working, if they need to cut stuff or they need to do stuff, and it could kill in that dress rehearsal, and then when it gets to the actual show, again, all these live elements are there, and on paper, they're very funny, but they may not execute for whatever
Yeah,
reason, you know,
totally.
live, and it's such a what a pressure cooker,
Such a
you
pressure
know?
cooker.
Yeah.
It really is such a pressure cooker, and it's very interesting to think about what does and doesn't work in that context. And some of it is, like, also sketch placement, like, maybe it is, like, that there was, some kissing in the previous sketch, and so some of that stuff hit less hard in this one, you know? Like, it
That's
is
for me, it has less impact and it feels too cheap,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I think that's probably right. Should we move on to the
Sure.
next sketch? Yeah, I think, well, we kind of do we let's just, like, very briefly I wanna do a quick check-in with you for weekend update because Jane Wickline had it was, like, kind of a song sketch a little
Yeah.
bit about the Stranger Things kids. Um, Song sketches are really, really hard. I think that this one
Especially Jane's presentation too, yeah.
yeah, because it is it's very, like, it's very, like, stand and deliver, like, this is it. It's not like a character who, like, this is this character's version of a country song or whatever. It's like, this is
Yeah,
the
yeah.
song she's presenting. Um, I thought that this one kind of ran out of specifics by the end of it, where it was just talking about they're ruining the economy instead of, like, plugging it into the unusual thing here.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, anything you wanna note on that? I feel like song sketches are hard to write just often from a pacing and timing perspective, but I'd love to
Oh,
hear
yeah,
if
and
there's
I've
anything
done
you
song sketches
yeah.
and song characters too, and they're very tricky, one, because you want the audience to hear your lyrics, so sometimes when I've done those characters, I've had to have the lyrics on the screen
Mhm,
to kind
mhm.
of have maximum impact, and I don't love it, but, like, the audience needs to hear your jokes,
Yeah.
and when you're doing music or especially playing guitar at the same time, it can get really, and Jane, again, like I'm saying, I'm starting to realize, like, I'm a man of a certain age, um, watching SNL, and I'm starting to see cast members where I'm like, "I don't get it," but there is somebody who does, and based off the audience reaction, I mean, Jane has her fans, right?
Right.
I can't remember if there's I don't wanna misgender, but, um, that Jane doing those musical things, Jane's done it a couple of times, and I'm like, "It's not my thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
for me."
Yeah.
And I can recognize that where it's just like, I don't get it, it's not for me, but that doesn't mean that somebody else doesn't get it, because it's the same thing when, like, I remember as a kid being like, "Oh my god, I love Sandler's Weekend Update," and I remember hearing people, adults complaining about, like, "All he's doing is just doing silly voices and just doing something dumb," and I'm like, "Yeah, but that's what's so cool about it, right?"
You're like, "What's the
And I think
problem?"
every generation has that where it's just
Yeah.
like the older generation is like, "Why is this funny?" I mean, when I was in high school, it was Tom Green, right? It's
Mhm.
like or Jackass, and it's just like where an older generation is like, "What's so fucking funny about this?" Pardon my language, but like, "What's so
It's
funny
no,
about this?"
it's kind of like a little bit of an Applejack situation, like
Yeah,
the
we eat
Applejack's
what
like,
we like.
we like." Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
It's sort of that. We have graduated from being the kids to the crusty dads. Sad.
And I remember I did a workshop at a high school recently, and they were, like, warning us being like, "Try to avoid 6, 7. Oh my god, try to avoid it," and me and the other instructor were like, "What's so bad about that? Whatever," like, they're kids just having fun. It's just so, like, harmless, and they're like, "No, you don't understand. It's, like, every day, every hour," like that kinda thing. But I like to think, I mean, I feel like I'm aging into an old hippie because 'cause I'm so, like, very much, like, very, like, "Hey, everything's cool," and, like, "Yeah, you follow your dreams and you follow your dreams," and, maybe it's too toxic positivity or whatever, but I I really don't connect to Jane's performance in comedy, but I do recognize that it's for somebody.
Yeah, I think that's a really great I mean, that's and that I think is also part of what I love about sketch too, is it's like they're short, they're really driven by the point of view of the writer and the performers
Mhm.
too, and so it makes sense, like, not everything could be for everyone because that
Yeah,
there would be no specificity, and if there weren't specificity, it wouldn't be for anybody, so it's,
exactly.
it's fun to play with and fun to know, like, this is or isn't for you.
I always
We eat
love
what
the
we like.
criticism of, like, not everything is for you,
Yeah.
and that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
I want things that I don't understand that I'm like, and other people are like, "Oh my god, that is hilarious." And I'm like, "Okay," but it's like good for you because if everything were just catered towards me, how boring would that be?
Yeah, totally.
It'd be
And
good for me, but not for
that's why AI is evil. So anyway,
Oh, I
we
was gonna say
yeah.
that was the map, right? That was supposed to happen in that bit of like,
Mhm.
instead of saying AI is the danger, it's the kids from Stranger Things, and we're mapping on the dangers of AI and making it about the teenagers from Stranger Things.
Yes.
And it's
And
like, I get it, but it just wasn't
it just
my
it sort of
taste.
there were a couple of specifics where it aligned, and then it really by the end, it just there wasn't it didn't work. And but I think that that's the kind of thing where if you are playing with that reveal, if you manage to actually do a really good job of seeing that through, that would be really, really, really interesting, like, really fun if you are
Mhm.
coming up with great specifics. I don't think that it really paid off those specifics. Um,
Yeah, for me, it didn't. I mean, I'm sure somebody of a generation of, like, Jane's generation who's a Stranger Things fan. I mean, I do love Stranger Things, but it's like, with the AI, I could see the map, and I'm sure it may work for certain, but, like, for me, yeah, as a old sketch teacher, I am kind of like, I need some more stronger specifics and maybe the
mhm.
execution too." But again, that's just, flavor, or season to taste, you
Yeah,
know?
totally. I love that, season to taste. Awesome. Let's talk about the next one.
Yeah.
So we have, deleted scenes from The Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
Yes, awesome. So what were your main takeaways from this one and the teachable
No,
moments
it's
for you in this one?
it's one of those classic things that they do because it's an easy setup. We take a very classic scene or classic movie where we know the beats, we know the characters, we know the elements of it, so there's not a lot of setup that needs to
Yeah.
happen in order to drop into that world where it's recognizable. We have something that's very recognizable from pop culture from the past 80 years, and it's meeting the wizard to get what they want, sh you know, to tell them their wishes, and I for me, the sketch already suffers from the voice modulator that they put on
Yes.
Bowen's
I
wizard
found it really
character.
hard to hear, actually. Yeah.
I couldn't hear a lot of the jokes, and I
Yeah.
felt like it was the wrong modulation to use for that character because I'm missing a lot of, because he's, like, insulting them after they
Yeah.
say, and I missed some of those specifics, so I was like, "Wait, what did he say?" And I kept rewinding it,
I was
and, of
doing that
course, the
too.
closed caption just didn't help, you
Right, the
know?
closed caption is, like, extra bad for SNL.
Yeah.
It's really funny. I will say I can't hear what they're saying, but I think my note would be to simplify the beginning more and get to the unusual thing faster, but I
Yeah.
honestly don't know. I could not hear exactly what they were saying. I found it very hard to hear that sketch, and it's so
Yeah.
unusual for something to just go technically wrong in SNL, like, usually in that way. So I really struggle. I'm curious if other people who are watching had any trouble with that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
sound
anyway, then
off
we
in
get
the
to the reveal.
comments.
Yeah, sound off. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because I mean, the sketch itself, though, I'm, like, kind of, like, wary of, like, the, dick joke
Yeah,
type of thing, writing a sketch around a dick joke. You know, you're also depending on the strength of Keenan,
yeah,
which is, like, you have one of the best sketch performers who ever lived, and there's a reason why he's been on the show for 20 years,
yeah,
and his long history with comedy. And you can take something that's a dick joke and he can make it work to a certain extent, right? For me, the impact isn't my favorite. Like, I don't love the premise of the sketch of just
yeah,
being like, I mean, it's funny to hear him say big old thing or
yeah,
whatever, and for them to kind of like play to that. And I love Sarah's performance of Judy Garland, like
yeah,
the character of Dorothy, but it just like, it's one of those sketches that comes later in the show where you're like, okay, I can see why they put it later,
right.
where the premise is clear, the joke is clear, but it's just not my taste.
Totally. I think that that one I felt like the reveal was kind of fun. I agree also a little bit like, okay, so that's what this is. And then I thought that the first beat was basically like the Austin Powers Swedish penis enlarger pump,
Mhm.
basically, where it's like, but you wrote this, but you said this. And then there wasn't this is a sketch where if the premise is a little basic, you just want to make sure that you're doing some interesting specifics and some interesting exploring. And instead, it was just each other character wanting their big old thing. And I have a feeling the big old thing was what was making people laugh in the room, probably.
Yeah.
But I think that you just my note would just be you want more specifics than that, basically. If you are going to play that premise, you just want to explore or hit different specifics to keep it interesting.
Especially when you have Keenan, like, my note would be that the denial at first is a speed bump to get to the fun,
Yes.
because otherwise the whole sketch would kinda have to be the denial part of it, right?
Yeah.
And then being even more hyper obvious of like, "Oh, but you did." But if like, I want a heart, I want a brain, and for you, a big old thing, yeah, that's what I want. Like, if he
Yeah.
owns up to it and just be like, "Well, I thought you wanted courage," and then, like, we get into the where he's proud of the fact that
Yes.
that's what he asked for,
Yeah.
and then you can kinda play with the specifics of because then they have, like, "Yeah, you wanted this because you wanted to do, this thing with your dick," or whatever, and I feel like I would rather hear Keenan say those things,
Totally, yes, rather
own
than it
up to
spreading
it,
out to the other characters. Yes, I think that this turned into it wound up sort of becoming lateral in a weird way by, like,
Mhm.
allowing the other characters to also chime in, sort of took some of the pressure off of the writing to push Keenan further, I think, in a weird way.
Yeah.
So I think that there was a lot about that just felt like a little bit like, yeah, kinda just, like, spilled out, sort of, like, it wasn't really a ton to really, like, hold on to.
It feels a bit static. Yeah,
Yeah,
and again, like, SNL sketches are gonna be pretty static because they're limited to what they're capable of doing. Now, over the years, they've gotten very creative with how they can use the space
yeah,
and different cameras and technology and whatnot, but it really is, like, if you've ever been there in person to see a show, you just see how, like, everything is, like, literally right there in this very small area,
yeah.
and everything is just so hectic, moves so fast. I remember going there for a Chris Rock episode. It was Chris Rock and Prince, and there was a sketch that they were rewriting, like, literally up until it was starting, and you could see on the cue cards, like, a bunch of, like, just white tape
Oh my
and
gosh.
stuff, and the sketch just faltered really bad because it's just like, how do you adjust to this in this, like, time frame? And then you're like,
Yeah,
"Oh, wait, that line's not there anymore in real time."
yeah,
So it's like there's so many elements that could go wrong, but I don't think that that was the case for this sketch.
yeah.
It just felt like kind of like static and lateral for me, and again, it's just, like, not my sense of humor.
Yeah, totally fair. Awesome. Let's keep moving. I think let's unless there's anything you want to say about Brad and his dad, my impulse is to skip over it just because that's really kind of a short film and sort of a
Yeah,
different
it's a little
structure.
short. I like these things because it reminds me of, like, watching SNL when I was a kid and, like,
Yeah.
you get TV Funhouse and all those
Yeah.
other, like, little shorts and stuff. I'm always open to them exposing, little short animated things or, directors that they wanna showcase and stuff like that. I'm always up for that, and I like this short.
Yeah.
I mean, I really did. I thought it was funny. At first, I was, like, kind of like, "Okay, where's this going?"
Yeah.
But everything else, the execution, the when he sees the girl he likes and them both just being snotty kids, just I thought it was very funny, but I liked it. Yeah,
Yeah. It's
I'm
very
eager to
like
see more.
yeah, it is nice to have something that kind of like breaks up the rhythm a little bit. Yeah,
I
totally.
like that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, next one, I think we have, three more sketches. So the next one was the final exam sorry, the 12-year-old in college.
Yes.
This is a really interesting one. This is a little
Mhm.
bit I have a little bit of a pet peeve of adults playing children in sketches and, like, leaning like because I think there's something that kind of comes undone a little bit where it's like, "But you are watching an adult." So
Mhm.
they're acting like there's something very literal that happens in my head when I see it where it's just like,
I get it,
not
yeah.
gonna have fun. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
don't know. That might just be me. But anyway,
I
I
think
love
I
to
grew up
yeah.
with, some Mexican sketch shows, so I'm used to adults playing very
Mhm.
young children, so
Yeah,
maybe
that's
it
totally
wasn't a
fair.
yeah. Yeah.
That's totally fair. I think that this one to me felt, like it was I liked the pacing of mom coming in and them yelling at each other,
Mhm.
and then going away, but it felt like, it felt like that was the most fun part, and I guess I liked that, but I feel like other than that, I wasn't, like, the most compelled by the overall, like, premise of it, but yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What jumped out to you, in this one?
This feels like there are certain sketches that you can tell that maybe I'm over, reading too much into it, but it feels like something that happened in the room, not even in the writer's room, but them in their offices, at 3 or 4 AM doing a bit, that then turns into a sketch
Yeah.
that they write around it where it's like him and Ashley just kind of doing this bit of like, her pretending to be his mom, in the office or whatever, and then them doing this back and forth, and people are like, "Oh, let's write that up," you know?
Yeah.
Because that's what it feels like. It just feels like that type of sketch where there's, like, not much meat to it, but it is funny to be like, "Yeah, I remember we had the TAMS program, in my college where a lot of, like, high school kids would be there for like computer, classes or whatever, but they'd live on campus
Yeah.
and they'd always travel in like little herds, because they were so afraid of everybody else who was like college age. And like, yeah, you shouldn't be, interacting with college kids at that age, it's
Right.
dangerous and, you could be taken advantage of. And I like the character because of the way that Bowen plays it. Again,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be biased about it, but
Oh, totally. No,
the
no.
funniest part to me is the dynamic of, like, there's one part where they are just going at it, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's why the sketch exists, is because 'cause they're having this back and forth that's so fun where they're, like, basically yelling at each other and having this moment of, like, desperation,
Yeah.
where you're like, "Oh, that's why." To me, it feels like this is why it exists right now and is being on air is because of this fun element. The sketch may not be as strong premise-wise or character-wise, but it's more about watching the performers, and SNL does this more than anybody else of being like, "We have these excellent performers who are very funny and they get by on charm, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't."
Right.
And the fun element of how actors work off of each other, whether it be like Kristen Wiig and Fred Armisen, like there's just certain, or Will
Yeah.
Forte and anybody else in the cast
Yeah.
where it's just like there's a certain electricity there that you can tell that they're just having fun with each other.
Yes.
And that's not a luxury that we have at UCB because we have to be like, it has to be game based. We can't just go off of vibes or like,
Yeah.
because it's fun watching you two argue with each other, we can't
Right.
really do that. But for something like SNL that's for such a wide audience, I think people are tuning in to see the personalities and they wanna see moments like that where it's almost
Yes.
like, "Ooh, there's potential to break," or "There's potential
Right.
for this."
Totally. Well, here's my question about this sketch in particular, though, because I thought
Yeah.
that given that that was the most fun part, is there a version of this sketch where he's not 12 years old, where it's just like this is another college student or something, or is part of the fun? Because it was really fun. The person denying that it's their mom who keeps coming in, that is really
Yeah.
fun. I
Yeah.
kind of think that the 12-year-old element of it doesn't have to be a part of it almost. I don't know.
I
I was
think Sorry, go ahead.
No, 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 that's it. I was just kind of thinking about it because it was I guess I was curious because the behavior was so much fun to see in that. I one thing I really liked, I liked that the points that the voice of reason were very gentle. Like, I thought that was really fun that
Mhm.
I think that and I think a great teachable thing for people watching that, like, your voices of reason
Yeah.
be like, "Hey, it's okay. You can tell us the truth. We know blah, blah, blah." Like, I think they did a great job of, like, earnestly leading the character forward. I think that's great. But yeah, I
But
was sort
that's
of
why
just
I think
curious. Yeah.
but that's why I think the 12-year-old element is necessary
Yeah.
because they wouldn't have that grace if it was another person their
That's
age.
true. That's a great point. That's a great
And then
point.
it makes it more about the mom being unusual as opposed to the character of the kid.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I think that probably would have stepped on that. Yeah, yeah, okay, I'm convinced. I'm convinced.
Yeah.
Alright, fine, it made sense.
I think it's just because of the premise that it presents of being like, right, this exists where like, younger kids are taking classes. This is a possible thing. And maybe Bowen having this experience or seeing a kid like this and being like, that kid being like, no, it's cool. I can hang out, I can be with you. But the truth is that they're still 12,
Yeah.
and they still have these like one of my favorite lines of this is when the please do not destroy why am I forgetting his name right now? But
Ben.
Ben, yeah, when Ben is like saying like I have two moms, and Bowen's reaction is like, "Oh my god, you must be so loved."
Yeah.
That made me
Yeah,
laugh so hard
that was
because it's
yeah,
like he's a kid, he still like desires these things and he's like his reactions are all coming from that place of fear when you're a child and you wanna be independent and you wanna seem grown up, but really you do need your mom. You really do need
yeah,
these protective elements, that you're not ready for,
You're
the
making me
real
wanna
world.
watch the sketch again. I feel like now I'm feeling moved by it. I wasn't when I
Yeah.
watched it. I did really like the specific of the boob on his back from his piano teacher too.
That
There were some great specifics in it.
but that's the thing that works for that, because if adults said that, it'd be creepy,
Right,
right?
you're totally
But when
right,
a
yeah.
12-year-old going through puberty, like, it's a big deal,
Yeah,
like, to have that
totally.
happen, and he equates that to, like, having sexual experience, and they're very kind about it, being like,
Yeah,
"Cool, bud."
yeah,
Like, that's why I think it works. For me, that's why I
yeah.
think the premise works, and I just love watching Bowen, and especially Bowen and Ashley play. It's just like, for me, it's fun, and I
That's
like the ending
actually
too.
it's really interesting. It just occurred to me that that's the second sketch of the night where they have this fast-paced thing, kind
Mhm.
of coming and going, where she kind of like, with the doctor sketch too, they had
Yep.
that same dynamic. That's interesting, yeah.
Mhm.
I'll keep an eye out for that, yeah.
I
Um,
think there's a connection there. I always love
yeah,
watching when you see cast members seem to click in a certain way, and you see habits that kind of form in other sketches where you see that element, because it's like, it works,
yeah,
and we have
totally.
3 days to get this up or
Yeah,
whatever.
absolutely. I no,
Yeah.
totally. Awesome. Should we move on to the final 2 sketches? There was,
You're not gonna mention Dakota Johnson and
oh my
Lily
god.
Allen? No, I was kidding.
Yeah, I wasn't going to, but
That felt like a
let's
scene itself. It was so weird. Like, I'm not familiar with Lily Allen's other than the David Harbour stuff. Uh, didn't think it was a great performance, but this whole scenic thing of, like, the mistress and stuff of Dakota Johnson playing it is like, I was like, "Whoa, it feels like its own scene
yeah.
rather than a musical act." But
Totally.
we don't
It
have to
was
get into that.
they've
We can
been
move
doing
on now.
that a bunch this season where it's like the sets have been built out in these
Sets.
really wild ways.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like the very, very elaborate. I'm curious to know more about behind the scenes of that.
I think they do that because to keep an audience engaged, because they're gonna flip probably away from it or not pay attention to it. Because if you don't
Yeah.
like the musical guests, it's very rare you're gonna watch it, but if you have an interesting set piece,
Yeah.
you're more likely to watch the performance of it even if you don't like the music.
Yeah.
So I think it's
That's
just all
true.
about engagement.
I
Yeah.
think that's probably right. Yeah. It's been very impressive. It's like incredible that they're so they don't need to make it more difficult for themselves, you
Yeah.
know. Awesome. Okay, so the next one was the actors. Wait, actors on actors. Oh, yeah, yeah, the
Mhm.
sort of
Yeah, the
yeah.
variety.
Yes, there you go, the
Yeah.
variety style thing, but where it's, holiday, characters.
Mhm.
This one of the premise came out, I was like, "Oh, this sounds like it's gonna be kinda cheesy," but it actually, I thought, delivered pretty well. I thought it
It
was
was
really
great.
fun. I thought it did a great job of, as a parody, capturing something about the original source material, and that's ideally what a parody does, right? Is it, like, teaches you something about the thing that is being pulled from.
This was my favorite sketch of the night
Yeah.
because of that.
Yeah.
This only work I love sketches like, yeah, Seth Reese used to be the, director of Onassis, my, sketch team in New York, and sometimes here in LA, and Seth writes for, Seth Meyers, but he has a very particular, like, taste and voice, and his whole thing was, like, that I learned from that I was like, "Yes," was nuance,
Mhm.
was, like, specificity in the seriousness of he, there was a sketch that inspired me to write where I did it here at UCBLA, where I was like, "Oh, this would be something that Seth would love," is, where I have this whole chaotic setup at the top where I play this chef and everything's going wrong, and I go, "Oh, no, the pasta making me pee-pee," and then the, like, sketch blacks out, and then a moderator comes out and goes, "Okay, now we're gonna talk to the cast of, Pasta Making Me Pee-Pee," and then we bring out chairs and we have water bottles and we're, like, wearing hats and stuff, and we're, like, talking about the sketch as if it's, like, serious art, and it's like, "So where did this idea come from?" It's like, so the thing about, like, suffering and, like, we're all talking very seriously and being like, "Oh, to piggyback off of that," and it's very dry
Fantastic.
and very true of, like, those Q&As that you go when you go to a screening, and the audience did not love it because they didn't understand it, but for me, it's, like, one of those things where I'm like, "Ooh, the specificity of these," because I love those variety, like, one-on-one,
Yeah.
artist with artists. There's a recent one with Michael B. Jordan and, oh god, what's his name? Jesse Plemons. That's really great, but it's like they nail the specificity of being like, "Yeah, what was it like to work?" And then being like, "Oh, yeah, that was all Dickens, that was all, Charles or whatever." Especially James Austin Johnson and Mikey Day in
Mhm.
their perspective, you know, their respective characters of the Grinch and Scrooge, the way that they're just like so committed to like talking about these things as if it's like how the actors talk
Yes.
worked for me so well,
So
especially like
great.
that first one with Bowen as well. There's like certain nuances and like
Yeah.
pauses and ways that they talk about the projects that they worked on that was so perfect for me,
Yeah.
and I think this is an excellent parody
I
sketch.
thought it was really great. I really loved the honest portrayal of the number of days, of Christmas, like,
Yes.
after I thought that was great specific joke writing. Again, at first, I thought that the premise gonna be a little hard to pull off, but it was so delightful and, like, really, really fun,
Yeah.
and, I was, again, very impressed with it as a parody, and, yeah, I thought it really worked great. It just captured something really great about the original, and that's, again, ideally what parody is doing. So, a great teachable one over here in a great way.
Absolutely, and if you're not familiar with that variety series, just, like, watch a couple. You don't even have to watch the whole thing, but if you aren't familiar with it, watch those first and then watch the sketch because I think you'll see, like, how perfect the specificity is, and this is one of those things where it's like, it works best as filmed.
Yes.
Because if you did this live, there's so many elements that cannot work on this, and the audience has to, in real time, catch up to the nuance of it that
Mhm.
it's not there are certain sketches that are just gonna work better for film than on
Mhm.
stage
Yes.
because of certain elements that you have to capture and the timing of it and the pace and the, you know, the gaps that they take or the certain, like, nuances in their physicality, it just won't work live on stage, that you need it to be filmed, and I
Yeah.
think that's why this sketch for me was really successful. I wrote down, "It's too smart for the audience."
Mhm.
I think this sketch is too smart for an SNL crowd, pardon, but, you know, I
That's
don't think it got the reaction it deserved, and I think it feels like a very solid parody sketch that maybe the audience doesn't appreciate,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
no, I think that's totally legit. It was a really
Yeah.
I, again, thought it was really strong. I agree. I think I would say this was the strongest sketch of the night for me too. I will say that, like, there wasn't a ton of competition for me for the strongest sketch of this night. Like, the premises were just a little softer on this one.
Yeah.
But I really thought that this was, like, really, really fun. And this, I would also say, is just a premise that truly could have was totally down to, like, how well it was written and performed, and it was just fantastic, like, the way it was done. I thought that was really impressive. Um,
Absolutely, 'cause, yeah, I had the same feeling being like, "Oh boy, here we go."
yeah,
And I was expecting it to be kind of, like, soft or whatever, but, yeah, the everything about it was executed so well,
yeah.
so it was personally my favorite sketch of the night.
Totally same. And then that brings us to the last sketch of the night, which was the, friend brunch.
Mhm.
So yeah, what were your thoughts on this one? Yeah,
It's
I
kinda
had
one of those things where it's like, I'm not familiar with the source material,
yeah,
and I can use context clues where anybody watching it can be like, "Right, it's funny because they set it up pretty clearly about being like, 'Oh, I love how, you know, direct she is in her songs,' right? You know, like, I could never be like that." And
yeah,
then we have these moments where they all reveal and they're using the song, I guess that's a Lily Allen song, in order to talk about the things that they don't have the bravery to discuss.
yeah.
I get it, just wasn't for me.
Yeah, I had the same feeling. At first I thought it was I think this is also one where the tech of it felt a little stilted, and for my stilted watching of it as someone who, like, wasn't totally plugged in, I was like, everything about it felt just a little loose to me, where I was
Yes.
like, I just don't like, because the first beat was about taking that last bit of the whatever, with the flatbread, and I was like, "Oh, okay, so it's gonna be, like, this person resenting the flatbread taker the whole time," and then it was like, "Oh, actually, no, it's just they're all having their moments," and it didn't really feel like it added up to that much for me.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't know, it just didn't really pop for me. Didn't I don't really even have much to say about it except that it just kinda didn't pop, and I didn't feel like, yeah, I didn't feel a ton about this one.
I'm looking over my notes, and I did appreciate something because sketch wasn't working for me, but then we have this kind of, like, I think they could kind of tell, like, it needed something, an
Yeah.
injection of something weird or kind of unusual. So when Josh comes in and he says, "They don't get my jokes," and he says, you know, "The beep beep, the daddy mobile runs on daddy juice,"
Yeah.
is so out of nowhere, but it was such a funny specific that to me, I was like, I kind of appreciated that break.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though technically it's not, you know,
Oh,
we would never tell our teachers to our students to do that, but, uh, yeah, 'cause I liked where it was started going, or even, like, somebody said, "I'm like Matilda, but poor," you know?
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
it started getting weirder. It started to feel like a true 10 to 1 where it's like, this coulda gone earlier in the show if it was just based off of that simple premise, but because it was towards the end of the show and we're almost at the good nights, we're able to just be weird with it, like,
Yeah.
break the premise a little bit and then start being weird and just try to get laughs.
I do think that I really liked the Keenan spicy margarita the spice margarita.
Yes.
I thought that was very funny. I feel like it just in a way, that one was so much fun to me that I was like, "Oh, I feel like if you are kind of, like, taking away the pressure of it has to build up into a kind of something more, like, why not
Yeah.
make everyone could be as specific
Mhm.
kind of, as that one was to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I think that it was sort of well placed at the very, very end, I would say. I think that makes a lot
Yeah.
of sense.
But yeah,
Um,
overall, wasn't my favorite. It, like, didn't execute as well as I thought.
yeah, totally agreed.
Yeah.
And then that was the whole show.
Mhm.
Frank, I love talking about this with you. This was so much fun. I
Yeah.
definitely would love to have you back, in the future to also just, like, talk about sketch writing in general, and specifically about characters and impressions. I again, like, I
Yeah.
think that your insights into the process of building characters, and building impressions, is just so fascinating, and I'd really love to hear that. Um,
Thank you.
Before we part ways, I would love to hear, is there anything you would like to plug? I know you're an amazing teacher, you, have classes going, workshops going, so anything that you would like to plug to the audience?
Uh, Not at the moment. I'm not really performing much these
Mhm,
days. I'm hoping to change that in 2020. I'm mostly just teaching,
mhm.
and, as far as sketch goes, I am, um, teaching a acting for sketch class here at UCB in LA, and then also a double threat class, which is for writers and actors who put up
Nice.
you know, their own show. And that's what I'm doing right now. Yeah.
Awesome, that's great. Everyone, if you are feeling at all tempted to take either of those classes, I highly recommend it. Frank is an incredible teacher, person, writer, performer, all of those
Oh,
things.
thank you.
And I'm so glad that we got to talk about all this. So thank you so much for joining, and we'll have you back soon.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right, talk to you later, Frank. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.